Hey everyone, David here, back again to review a new episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and this time it is for episode 14 of season 1 entitled Yes Men. And no, Jim Carrey's not in it, but you do know who is in it? Lady Sif from the Thor movies, which we kind of already knew based on the introduction of Lorelai, who turns out to be a character from the comics and is also of Asgardian descent. And just like I was expecting the episode to be based on that introduction from last week's episode, we're back to the whole case of the week type of scenario with some things from the plot so far serving more as a subplot more than anything else. And those elements consist of Coulson trying to figure out what that drug was and where it came from. But more on that later. As a whole, the episode was okay because, like I said, it goes back to the case of the week type of formula with this villain running around trying to conquer the world and raise an army and such. And I'm going to be brutally honest, I was never a huge fan of a villain or a female villain, because most of the time it's kind of a female anyway. It originates back to the likes of Poison Ivy from the Batman universe. I've never been a huge fan of that femme fatale being able to influence men and have men do whatever they want. I don't know, but I never really liked villains that are able to control, female villains that are able to control men, and that kind of took away from this episode being anywhere near good as the previous at least 2 or 3 episodes, because I'm just kind of tired of that kind of story. And I understand that this is a character from the comics and it's been there for some time, and if done well, this could be a viable threat to our heroes. And I did feel that a little bit in this episode. There were moments where Lorelai was kind of like a virus infecting all these guys, so you didn't know who was quote unquote infected or not. In fact, Fitz for a second there had me convinced that he legitimately fixed the doohickey, but turns out that he was infected. So I did think that they could have done some fun things with that and really amplified the tension within the climax of this episode. But as a whole, I found I just didn't like that whole aspect of Lorelai as a villain, because I've never been a huge fan of that kind of thing with any kind of villain, even Poison Ivy. And I don't know what it was, but there were some moments of cheese. There were some rather cheesy moments throughout this episode, and one of those things would have to be those powers. You know, there were moments where the guys that she would take control of would act in that whole I'll die for you, my love," that kind of thing, and I'm like, oh, I'm so tired of that, to be honest. So I don't know. I really didn't like that about this episode, but it's not so much because of the episode per se, but it's just a personal thing, something that I've never really clicked with when it came to female villains with these kind of powers. And there were just other moments that I felt kind of cheesy. The entire opening with that biker gang and that guy and the TV effects, you know, I found incredibly cheesy and kind of tacky. And there's moments like that throughout this episode, but counteracting that, there were some moments that I thought were kind of clever, whether it be a line of dialogue. One in particular is said by Lady Sif that just had me laughing a lot, and other clever elements that made me sure that the writers are not completely forgetting something, such as the whole thing with Ward and May, and on top of that, not knowing whether or not Lorelai was making up stuff or if she was really telling the truth. And I found that rather intriguing. And to be honest, I found the ending to be kind of fun and exciting. I really enjoyed having the climax kind of intercut between what everybody's doing aboard the ship and trying to, you know, fight off the bad guys, plain and simple. And Jamie Alexander reprising her role as Lady Sif is always cool. She kicks an awful lot of ass. But I will admit that there were moments where I felt like the TV crew, you know, ABC just couldn't afford to get Chris Hemsworth and Tom Hiddleston now, so they kind of had to settle with the female versions, with Sif being the Thor kind of character and Lorelai being the low-key figure in this episode, down to the ending where she's all chained up and muzzled. I'm like, oh, you're trying really hard to replicate the Avengers here. But what I did find kind of surprising was the small payoff at the end, having the subplots become much more important by the end, instead of just wrapping up the episode saying, well, we did it, guys, back to roaming the air. I was gonna say seas, I don't know why, but roaming the air and, case of the week kind of thing. No, they went ahead and not only brought back the whole thing with Ward and May and possibly ended it just like May insinuated, but also the whole thing with Sky and how Coulson just flat out said, you know what, I'm done with secrets, we're gonna find this out, which is awesome. But then he says, we're gonna keep this from the rest of the team, and I'm like, that kind of means that they're hardly going to mention it when the crew is around, so we might be stuck with the whole case of the week type of scenario for the next few episodes, because they're not going to be able to do much if they're stuck with this crew that they can't talk about this particular thing with. So I was like, ugh. But lo and behold, May hears them out through this little microphone and contacts HQ or whatever, and she's like, Coulson knows. That's actually very interesting. I was not expecting that, and I will give props to the writers for giving something that has me very intrigued, and I'm definitely looking forward to see how it plays out in the rest of the season. So as a whole, I thought this episode was okay. I never thought of it to be bad, but it had its moments where I just couldn't connect with it, whether it be a cheesy moment or even a moment that didn't really make sense. Coulson was there when Civ said that Lorelai can take over a guy by speaking to him and touching him. So what does he do? He lets Lorelai speak to him and touch him. Ward, that's completely out of character for Ward, so it just really did not make sense for me. But I did figure the ending to be a more than enough decent payoff to a somewhat subpar episode, because I did find it interesting that May kind of knew this when Coulson didn't, so I really am interested to see how that plays out, and I did find the climax to be quite fun and exciting. So I'm going to go ahead and give Yes Man a 7 out of 10, but it's a high 7 out of 10. It was borderline 8, but some of those things that, whether they were cheesy or tacky or didn't make sense, kind of took me out a little bit. So thank you guys for watching. Let me know what you guys thought of this episode, Yes Man, and as always, I'll see you guys next time.